So I came across this story on Drudge Report, and guys, we just keep seeing this time and time again. We heard a lot of talk about it, especially during those Jade Helm exercises, that they're leaning more and more and more um, towards quantum predictive computer forecasting. And this is an article about a guy uh, who uses computers to find future criminals. It's about this guy named Richard Burke who's been involved in stuff like this uh, basically since the 60s. He really got into the computer stuff aspect of it in the 90s. And um, I'll leave a link so you guys can come and read this article. It's quite lengthy and it's got a lot of interesting information in there. But this is why um, people uh, should be terrified of a video game like Pokemon Go. Now, listen, guys. I grew up playing video games, alright? And I know for years, one of the things that I always said I was waiting on was virtual reality. And I still think virtual reality has some very cool aspects about it, but some of it's very terrifying. But with things like Pokemon Go and the massive amount of data that's being collected um, by everybody who installs this application on their phone or tablet or whatever it is they're using. Um, can you imagine if a corrupt government, like the U.S. government is, does in fact have quantum computers that they're feeding massive amounts of data from every source they can get to predict the future and predict the outcome of any event with just a small margin for error? Do you imagine what people could do with that power? I mean, let's just put it like this. Let's just say that you know, you're just sitting at home one day and some random person hands you a computer and says, hey, this thing's tapped into every piece of information basically on the planet that any computer, any camera, any phone, any TV, any tablet, anything that's any radio wave, I mean, anything you can think of, this thing is tapped into. And he says, here, you'll now be able to tell the future of almost every event within a couple of percentage points just by using this machine. Can you imagine how that would change your life? And can you imagine how much power you would have? And this is just what I want to point out to you. This is something that's very real that's going on now, as they're already using massive amounts of data to find information about criminals. Um, if you ever see these commercials or stories or anybody talking about analytics, that's what this stuff is. It analyzes every piece of data and comes to some sort of conclusion. And just imagine if you've got hundreds of millions of people downloading video games unknowingly, feeding this machine so that people that are elite people have the ability to tell the future, and they've got people feeding into the system under the guise of a fun video game. It's pretty darn interesting Minority Report world that we might be evolving into, guys. And this is just something I want y'all to see and something I want you to consider. You guys take care.